The warning lights flickered red across the abandoned station as Jake Chen pulled himself through the narrow corridor. His salvage crew had already stripped the outer sections clean, but Jake always checked the deeper levels. That's where the good stuff hid. Jake, we're heading back to the ship. This place gives me the creeps, his captain's voice crackled through the comm. 5 more minutes, Jake replied, scanning the walls with his handheld detector. Something was drawing power in this section. Active power meant valuable tech. The corridor opened into a massive chamber. Jake's breath caught. Rows of containment cells lined the walls, all empty and broken open. All except one. That's when he heard it. A low, rumbling sound that made his bones vibrate. Not mechanical. Alive. Jake approached the sealed cell slowly. Through the reinforced glass he saw her. A creature from nightmares and legends. 8 feet of muscle and fur, midnight black with silver stripes. 4 arms ending in claws that could tear through steel. A feline face with too many teeth and eyes that glowed like amber stars. A Vacross. The galaxy's most feared predators. She was chained to the wall with thick metal restraints. Neural collars circled her neck and all 4 wrists, blinking with cruel red lights. The collars sent pain signals directly into the brain. Jake had seen them used on dangerous prisoners. They were supposed to be illegal. The creature's eyes locked onto him. Jake should have run. Every survival instinct screamed at him to turn around and never look back. But he saw something in those eyes that stopped him cold. Pain. Exhaustion. And something else. A question. A plea. You're hurt, Jake whispered, knowing she probably couldn't understand him. He examined the cell's control panel. Kashari technology. The empire that had claimed this sector before humanity arrived. They were slavers who used other species as weapons and labor. The war had ended 5 years ago, but places like this still existed in forgotten corners of space. His comm erupted. Jake, get out of there. Our sensors picked up something big in your section. I found someone, Jake said quietly. Someone who needs help. Are you insane? Nothing good is locked up like that. Leave it. Jake looked at the Vacross again. She tilted her head, watching him with those intelligent eyes. Waiting to see what he would do. He thought about the stories. About humans who walked away when they should have helped. About the easy choice versus the right choice. I can't, Jake said and disconnected his comm. The control panel was locked, but Jake was good at his job. He pulled out his tools and started working. Behind the glass, the Vacross tensed, her eyes widening. She made a sound almost like a word in a language he didn't know. It took 20 minutes to bypass the system. The door hissed open. The smell hit him first, unwashed fur and old blood. The Vacross pulled against her chains, but the neural collars kept her weak. Jake stepped inside. This was the moment she could kill him. One swipe of those claws and he'd be dead before he hit the floor. Instead, she watched him approach. Her breathing was heavy but controlled. I'm going to shut these off, Jake said, reaching for the first collar. Please don't eat me. The collar clicked open. The Vacross gasped, her body shuddering. Jake moved to the next one, then the next. With each collar removed, she seemed to grow stronger. By the time he reached the last restraint, she was standing at her full height, towering over him. The chains fell away. They stared at each other in the dim light. The most dangerous predator in known space and one human mechanic who should have known better. She raised one massive hand. Jake closed his eyes. He felt her clawed finger gently touch his chest, right over his heart. When he opened his eyes, she was looking at him with something that might have been wonder. Then her legs buckled. She collapsed and Jake rushed to catch her, even though she outweighed him by 300 pounds. I've got you, he said. You're safe now. Behind them, the sound of his cruise ship engines faded into the distance. They had left without him. Jake looked down at the unconscious alien warrior in his arms and sighed. Well, he muttered. This is going to be complicated. 3 weeks had passed since Jake smuggled the Vacross onto Redstone Station. His small workshop in the forgotten lower levels became their hiding place. She was stronger now, moving with the grace of a natural predator. Jake had learned her name through gestures and simple words. Javert. It meant something like silent storm in her language. She learned human words faster than he expected. Her voice was deep and rumbling, each word carefully shaped. Why you save Chavera? She asked one evening while Jake repaired a broken servo motor. He looked up from his work. She sat cross-legged on the floor, still too large for his furniture. Her amber eyes never left him when he was in the room. Because it was wrong, Jake said simply. What they did to you. Nobody deserves that. Humans are weak, small, soft. She tilted her head. You should fear Vaycross. Probably, Jake admitted. But I don't. She made a sound like a low purr. Strange human. Over the following days, Shavera began to share her story. She spoke of her world, where mountains touched the sky and her people hunted in great packs. She was a war guardian, a sacred protector chosen from birth and trained in ancient combat arts. The Kashari had attacked her colony world, killing many and taking the survivors as slaves. War guardians choose bound, she explained one night. One being to protect. One life more important than our own. Sacred bond. Forever. Like a bodyguard? Jake asked. No. Deeper. Soul connection. She placed a hand over her chest. I was not bound when captured. Now I am alone. No pack. No purpose. Jake felt the weight of her loneliness. You have purpose. You're free now. You can go home. Shavera's eyes dimmed. Cannot return without honor. Cannot return without completing guardian duty. Before Jake could respond, alarms shrieked through the station. His computer screen flashed red warnings. Ships approaching. Kashari signatures. They found us, Jake breathed. Shavera was on her feet instantly, every muscle tense. Bounty hunters. They track neural collar signature. Even broken, it leaves mark. The station security will help us, right? She showed her teeth. Humans made treaty with Kashari. I am escaped property. They will let hunters take me. Jake's mind raced. The lower cargo bay. There's a maintenance shaft that leads to the emergency pods. You run. Save yourself, Shavera said. Not happening. Come on. They ran through the dark corridors. Behind them, Jake heard the heavy footsteps of the hunters. 4 of them heavily armed. Station security had unlocked all the doors for them. They reached the cargo bay. The hunters were seconds behind. Jake fumbled with the pod controls while Shavera positioned herself between him and the entrance. The hunters burst through. They weren't Kashari but hired mercenaries. Big, armored and carrying plasma rifles. Step away from the property, the lead hunter barked. She's not property, Jake shouted back. She's a person. The hunter laughed. She's worth 50,000 credits. Dead or alive. They raised their weapons. Jake did something incredibly stupid. He stepped in front of Shavera, spreading his arms wide. You'll have to go through me. Time seemed to freeze. Jake heard Shavera's sharp intake of breath behind him. The hunters looked confused. Then everything happened at once. The hunters fired. Shavera moved faster than Jake's eyes could follow. She grabbed him and spun, taking a plasma bolt in her shoulder that was meant for his chest. She roared with rage and pain. What happened next, Jake would remember in fragments. Shavera unleashed years of captive fury. She was a blur of claws and fangs. The hunter's armor meant nothing. In 30 seconds all 4 were down. She stood over them, breathing hard, blood dripping from her wound. Then she turned to Jake. Her eyes were different now. Intense. Burning. She knelt before him, placing both right hands over her heart. She spoke in her language, words that sounded like a prayer or a vow. Then in human words she said, You stood before death for Shavera. Weak human who should run. You chose to protect Guardian. You were hurt, Jake said. I couldn't let them. Shavera chooses bound, she interrupted. Chooses Jake Chin. From this moment until last breath. You are Shavera's purpose. Shavera's honor. Shavera's heart. She pressed her forehead to his chest. Jake realized the enormity of what just happened. He gently touched her head. I don't understand everything, he said softly. But I won't leave you either. Her purr rumbled through the entire bay. The news spread across the galaxy faster than lightspeed travel. A human had been bound to a Vaycross war guardian. Every news network showed the same grainy security footage from Redstone Station. Jake and Shavera fighting side by side. Her ritual of binding caught on camera. They ran. For 3 months they moved from station to station, planet to planet. Always one step ahead of Kashari hunters. Always watched by curious eyes. Jake's small cargo ship wasn't much, but it was home now. Shavera had to duck through every doorway. She spent hours teaching Jake her language and combat moves. He taught her about human culture and how to fix engines. You must learn to fight properly, she insisted one morning, demonstrating a defensive stance. Bound must survive. I'm a mechanic, not a warrior, Jake protested, trying to copy her movements. You are Shavera's bound. That makes you warrior. She corrected his posture with gentle pushes from her massive hands. Jake saved Shavera. Now Shavera keeps Jake alive. Their ship's communication system chimed. An incoming message. Priority level. Jake's stomach dropped when he saw the sender. The Vaycross Conclave. The ruling body of Shavera's entire species. Shavera's fur stood on end as she read the message. They summon us, both of us, to Homeworld. Is that bad? Very bad. Or very good? Shavera does not know. She looked worried for the first time since Jake met her. Binding alien is forbidden by old laws. But also unprecedented. Conclave must judge if Jake is worthy. And if they decide I'm not? Shavera's voice dropped to a growl. Then Shavera fights entire Conclave. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. The journey to Circuith Prime took 2 weeks. Kashari forces tried to intercept them twice. The first time, Jake managed to outmaneuver their fighters through an asteroid field. The second time they weren't so lucky. A Kashari cruiser caught them near a dead moon. Its weapons locked on. They were outgunned and outmatched. Got any ideas? Shavera asked, checking their minimal weapon systems. Jake stared at his sensors. Then he smiled. Yeah. A really stupid one. Shavera likes stupid human ideas. Jake piloted straight at the cruiser full speed. The Kashari captain must have thought he was surrendering. At the last second, Jake fired their entire cargo of mining explosives and veered hard. The explosives struck the cruiser's shield generators. Now! Jake shouted. Shavera activated their one good plasma cannon. She fired at the exact spot where the shields flickered. The shot punched through, hitting the cruiser's engine core. They barely escaped the explosion. The blast waved through their ship spinning. Jake fought the controls while Shavera braced him with her arms, keeping him in his seat. When they finally stabilized, they were alive. The cruiser was expanding debris. Shavera laughed, a sound like rolling thunder. Insane. Beautiful. Very human. News networks picked up that story too. The human and his Vaycross destroyed a Kashari cruiser with mining equipment and luck. By the time they reached Circuith Prime, they were famous. And infamous. The planet was beautiful and terrifying. Massive cities carved into mountainsides. Vaycross everywhere, thousands of them. All warriors. All stronger than any human could ever be. A delegation met them at the spaceport. 12 war guardians, each one imposing and deadly. They surrounded Jake and Shavera in a circle. The lead guardian, an older female with white streaks in her black fur, stepped forward. She looked at Jake the way someone might examine an interesting insect. This is the human? Her voice carried centuries of authority. This small creature is your bound, Shavera? Yes, High Guardian Kethare, Shavera said formally. Jake Chin of Earth. He freed Shavera from slavery. He stood before death to protect Shavera. He is worthy. Another guardian snorted. He is prey. Weak. Soft. An insult to our traditions. Then test him, Shavera challenged. Let Conclave see what Shavera sees. High Guardian Kethare's eyes gleamed. Very well. The trials of the bound will begin tomorrow. 3 tests. Strength. Wisdom. Heart. She looked at Jake. These trials were made for Vaycross warriors. Most aliens die in the first trial. Jake swallowed hard but met her gaze. I'm ready. You should be terrified, Kethare said. I am, Jake admitted. But I won't abandon Shavera. She didn't abandon me. Something shifted in the High Guardian's expression. Respect perhaps. Or curiosity. Interesting, she murmured. Tomorrow at dawn, human. We shall see if you are truly worthy of our finest warrior. That night, in their assigned quarters, Shavera held Jake's hand in her massive paw. Jake can refuse, she whispered. Shavera will understand. Jake squeezed back. We're in this together. That's what bound means, right? Her purr filled the room. Yes, together. Dawn broke over the ancient arena carved into the mountainside. Thousands of Vaycross filled the stone seats, their eyes fixed on the human standing in the center. Jake looked impossibly small surrounded by towering alien warriors. High Guardian Kethare raised her 4 arms. Silence fell. The first trial. Strength. She gestured to the far end of the arena. A massive gate opened. Out stepped a Vaycross warrior, young and powerful. You must last 3 minutes against our champion. Without weapons. Begin. The champion charged. Jake barely dodged the first strike. The crowd roared. The Vaycross was faster and stronger than anything Jake had ever faced. A punch caught his ribs. He felt something crack. Pain exploded through his chest. Stay down, human, the champion growled. Save yourself, shame. Jake struggled to his feet. Blood dripped from his mouth. Shavera watched from the Guardian's platform, every muscle tense. She wanted to intervene but couldn't. The trials forbade it. The champion attacked again. Jake couldn't win with strength. So he didn't try. He moved differently using techniques Shavera taught him. Redirect, don't resist. Use their strength against them. When the champion charged, Jake dropped and rolled. The warrior crashed into the arena wall. 2 minutes passed. Jake was bleeding from a dozen places. Broken ribs made every breath agony. But he stayed on his feet. The champion was barely tired. 30 seconds left. The champion grabbed Jake by the throat, lifting him off the ground. Why do you persist? You cannot win. Jake gasped out words. Not trying to win. Trying not to quit. Something flickered in the champion's eyes. Respect. He held Jake there as the final seconds counted down. When the bell rang, he set Jake down gently instead of throwing him. The crowd was silent. Jake had lost. But he'd survived. The second trial, Kethare announced. Wisdom. They brought Jake to a chamber filled with holographic displays. A strategic simulation appeared. An ancient Vacross battle scenario that had stumped military minds for generations. Solve this, Kethare commanded. Show us you have more than determination. Jake studied the scenario. Vacross forces trapped in a canyon. Enemy on all sides. Traditional Vacross tactics focused on direct assault. Overwhelming force. Every solution path led to heavy casualties. But Jake wasn't Vacross. He thought differently. What if they don't fight at all? He said quietly. The Guardians murmured in confusion. Jake manipulated the hologram. The enemy expects attack. Expects honor combat. But here and here. He pointed. Weak points in the canyon wall. A small team could trigger a controlled collapse. Create a new path. The whole army escapes while the enemy is blocked by rubble. That is retreat, a Guardian objected. Cowardice. That's survival, Jake countered. Those warriors live to fight another day. Protect their families another day. Sometimes wisdom is knowing when not to fight. Kethare stared at the solution. No Vacross had ever considered it. Unprecedented, she finally said. But effective. She nodded slowly. You pass. The crowd's murmur grew louder. This human was surprising them. The final trial, Kethare said, her voice heavy. Heart. They returned to the arena. Shavera was brought down, bound in chains. Jake's blood went cold. The trial is simple, Kethare explained. We have poisoned your bound. The antidote is in that box. She pointed to a container across the arena. But between you and the box is a gauntlet. Blades. Fire. Death traps. You are already injured. You will likely die before reaching it. Jake looked at Shavera. She struggled against her chains. No. Jake must not. Shavera forbids. However, Kethare continued, if you refuse, we will give her the antidote anyway. She will live. You simply fail the trial and must leave her forever. Jake understood. This wasn't about reaching the box. It was about whether he would risk everything for Shavera. He started walking toward the gauntlet. Jake, please? Shavera roared. Not worth it. Shavera will live. Stop. Jake didn't stop. The first blade slashed his arm. He kept going. Fire scorched his back. He stumbled but pushed forward. A spike trap caught his leg. He dragged himself on. Shavera was screaming now, fighting her chains so hard they began to crack. Jake was halfway there. Bleeding. Burnt. Broken. He looked back at her and smiled. Together, he called out. Remember? Kethare suddenly raised her hand. The trap stopped. Enough. Jake collapsed. Medical teams rushed to him. The High Guardian approached Shavera. There was no poison, she said quietly. We needed to see his heart. Now we have. She looked at the assembled conclave. This human has shown strength of spirit, wisdom beyond his years, and a heart that would die for another. He is worthy. The crowd erupted. Some cheered. Some protested. But the judgment was made. Shavera broke her chains and ran to Jake. She held him carefully as the medics worked. Stupid human, she whispered, tears in her eyes. Beautiful, stupid human. Jake laughed weakly. Did we pass? Yes, she purred. We passed. 2 months after the trials, Jake was still recovering on Circuith Prime when the message arrived. His hands shook as he read it. Earth's outer colonies were under attack. The Kashari Empire had launched a full invasion. They're using us as an excuse, Jake said bitterly. Saying humans stole their property. That we're harboring criminals. Shavera's growl rumbled through the room. Kashari seek any reason for war. They want human worlds. We gave them excuse. The Vaycross conclave gathered in emergency session. Jake and Shavera stood before them again. This time, Jake wasn't on trial. He was asking for help. The Kashari fleet outnumbers us 3-1, Jake explained, showing the tactical displays. They're hitting civilian colonies. Places with families. Children. His voice cracked. We can't stop them alone. Vaycross do not interfere in other species' wars, an elder guardian stated. This is tradition. We remain neutral. Neutral? Jake's anger flared. You know what the Kashari do. You know how they treat conquered species. Shavera knows. He pointed at her scars. She lived it. High Guardian Kethare spoke. If we aid humans, we make Kashari our enemy. We risk Vaycross lives for aliens. Jake stepped forward. I'm not asking as an alien. I'm asking as someone bound to one of your war guardians. Shavera is part of me now. I'm part of her. That makes me part of you, doesn't it? The chamber fell silent. Shavera moved beside Jake. Conclave taught Shavera that bound is sacred. That guardian protects bound above all else. Jake's people die. Jake's heart breaks. How can Shavera not fight? She looked around at her fellow guardians. How can any of us not fight? One by one, war guardians stood. First 5. Then 20. Then hundreds. Our bound calls, one said. We answer. Kethare watched this with ancient eyes. Finally she too stood. The conclave is divided. But war guardians have made their choice. We will honor the bond. 3 days later, a combined fleet jumped into human space. 50 human ships and 30 Vaycross warships. It wasn't enough to match the Kashari numbers, but it was hope. Jake coordinated the fleet from the flagship's bridge. Human admirals had initially protested, but Shavera made it clear. Jake spoke for the Vaycross forces. Where he led, they would follow. Kashari formation ahead, the sensor officer reported. Flagship at the center. Heavy cruisers surrounding. Jake studied the display. He'd learned Vaycross tactics and human strategy. Now he combined them. Human ships form up defensive. Draw their fire. Vaycross fleet, you're with me and Shavera. We're going straight through their line. That's suicide, an admiral objected. That's what they'll think too, Jake replied. Trust me. The battle began. Human ships absorbed the initial assault, their shields flaring. The Kashari fleet pressed forward, confident. Then the Vaycross ships accelerated to impossible speeds. They tore through the Kashari formation like claws through silk. Jake and Shavera piloted a boarding craft straight at the Kashari flagship. 20 war guardians followed them. They punched through the hull and fought their way to the bridge. The Kashari High Commander waited there. The same one who had ordered Shavera's capture years ago. He recognized her immediately. The failed weapon, he sneered. Come back to your master? Shavera's roar shook the walls. Shavera has no master. Shavera has bound. Jake stood beside her. You made a mistake. You thought enslaving them made them yours. But you can't chain honor. You can't collar courage. The commander drew his weapon. Then die together. The fight was brief and brutal. Shavera moved like living lightning. Jake fought with everything she'd taught him. The other guardians swept through the ship's defenders. When it ended, Jake stood over the fallen commander. It's over, he said. Call off your fleet. With their flagship captured and their commander defeated, the Kashari forces retreated. The battle was won. Days later, Jake and Shavera stood on a human colony world, watching the sunset. Around them, humans and Vaycross worked together, rebuilding what had been damaged. This is just the beginning, Shavera said. More guardians seek human bounds. Our peoples grow closer. You think that's good? Jake asked. She placed her massive hand over his. Shavera thinks meeting Jake Chen was best thing that ever happened. To Shavera. To both our peoples. Jake smiled. I freed you because it was right. I never imagined it would lead to all this. Humans are brave, stupid, compassionate, strong in ways Vaycross never understood. She purred softly. Galaxy will never be same. Human ships and Vaycross vessels patrolled together overhead. A new alliance born from one mechanic's choice to free a prisoner. From one warrior's choice to bind herself to someone the galaxy called weak. Jake leaned against Shavera. So what do we do now? Now. She laughed. Now we live. Fight when needed. Build when possible. Together. Together, Jake agreed. And the stars above witnessed the beginning of something unprecedented. Something the galaxy would remember for generations. The bond between human and Vaycross. between the small ones who walked between stars and the warriors who chose to walk beside them.